Hi folks, the purpose of this brief mini lecture is to orient you to the requirements of the film review assignment and to explain briefly what an evaluation argument is, as well as criteria and judgment, and to give you a few pointers before you sit down and begin writing. Even if you've already begun writing, this mini lecture will help you as well. It'll help you clarify some things, and you can make sure that you're on the right track before submitting your paper. So what is an evaluation and what is its purpose? Before you really think about purpose, you probably also need to think about audience. So for this particular paper, you're to imagine that your audience is made up of other Johnson & Wales students and that your review would be published in a college newspaper. So you'll have to imagine that we have a college newspaper at Johnson & Wales, but that's where it would appear. And so what you need to do is think about, well, what is it that Johnson & Wales students care about when deciding whether or not they're going to go view a film? And you want to choose some of those particular aspects of the film to write about for your paper. So with each one of these aspects, these criteria we'll call them, what you're going to have to do is make some choices about what you like or dislike about them. And that's what we mean by evaluation, is that you're making a value judgment. So, as I was saying, you're going to need to choose some criteria that you feel your audience is going to care about. Perhaps acting might be at the top of the list. There could be, soundtrack that might matter to a lot of people. It could be special effects. Any of those things that we talked about in class. It could be set design. It could be, technology. It could be costuming. It could be any aspect of the film that you feel your audience is going to care about. And remember, your audience is college students, made up of college students. So point of evaluation is where a judgment will be made. So let's say I'm choosing acting. Then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go into that film and pull out different aspects of the acting that I think are either good or bad, that I would say that would provide as a reason for either not seeing or seeing this movie. When you write your evaluation, however, it's very, very important that what you do not do is simply provide a summary of the plot. That's not the point of a film evaluation. First of all, you don't want to provide a summary of the plot, because then you'll give away every plot point, and there will be nothing new for the reader to see when they actually go see the movie. So you only want to give them a taste of what the film is going to be about. So in this image that you see here, what we have is an image from Gattaca, and on the left you have Ethan Hawke, who portrays a young man who was not genetically designed as other people in his world were. So therefore he was not perfect. He had some health aspects, among mental aspects, intelligence perhaps, that was questioned because he was not genetically pre-designed like everyone else. The character on your right there, Uma Thurman, has a heart defect. And what happens is she thinks that Ethan Hawke's character, she's led to believe that Ethan Hawke's character is one of these genetically pre-designed individuals that is perfect, but there's a part of her that always suspects that maybe he's not. And so you could just present that as the premise of the film and talk about how individuals that are genetically pre-designed are given choices and options that others who are not pre-designed genetically are not. And that's really all that a reader of your film review would need to know. And then you could go into the different aspects of set design, costuming, soundtrack, special effects, anything else that you wanted. But it's important to early on provide that summary of the premise of the film before you go into all of those different aspects of the film. Otherwise, you're not really providing, I guess, a starting point. In other words, the set design, all these things somehow need to be connected to that premise, and you need to show how. For each of the criteria that you have, you need to make judgments and provide evidence for. For instance, if you're going to say that the actors come across as cool and uncaring in Gattaca, that is a judgment. But you need to go a little bit further and explain why that's either a good thing or a bad thing. On the surface, you know, some people might think, well, that's a bad thing because we don't want our characters to be cool and uncaring. But in the context of the premise of this film, that's the way really that a lot of these people do come across, and they should come across. So what you'd want to do is provide evidence for why you think this particular scene that you've chosen that shows that they're cool and uncaring is a good thing, and so what you have to do is provide detailed evidence for that. Be specific about what you think is good about it or what you think is bad about it. Be specific about why you like it or why you dislike it. Always be specific about the whys. If you don't provide evidence for your judgment, then you're really not proving your point, and your grade on this paper would suffer. You got to be very specific about the claims that you're making and provide evidence for each one of them. You also want to make sure that all of your judgments that you're making are connected to your overall claim. And remember, your overall claim is the main point that you're arguing in your entire review. So either you're going to recommend this film or not recommend it, and you need to be specific about why. And be sure that each of these value judgments that you're making throughout the paper is clearly connected to why you would recommend or not recommend it. So a few pointers to keep in mind. Again, don't forget your audience. You want to be interesting. Talk about things that your audience is going to find interesting. You want to be conversational, have a conversational tone. While this isn't a very, very informal situation where you would use a lot of slang or anything of that manner, you can be conversational here and use first person, use contractions, things like that. So you want to find sort of a voice that's between speaking to your best friend and also maybe speaking to a stranger that you haven't met before that you might have a little bit of a formal relationship with. So you want something sort of in between there. More importantly, however, is honesty. I used to write book reviews for a local journal / magazine, and these reviews were often published in other journals around the Southeast. And I always felt that I had to be completely honest about what I thought about a book. And I do think that I always was. And like I told you guys in class, I would always try to find, even a book that I just loved or a short story collection that I just loved, I would still find one thing that I could talk about that I thought that the writer could have done a little bit better. And as a reader, I think you appreciate someone who writes a review that you can trust. So for instance, when you see these movie posters that say, New York Daily News says blah 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 and San Francisco Chronicle says blah 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 blah, I wouldn't necessarily trust that. But if it was a specific reviewer and I knew that after reading their column for a particular while that it seemed that their taste was a lot like mine, I would totally and completely trust this person. So it's important that you be honest with your reader, because ultimately what that's going to do is going to help you build a relationship with your audience. And believe it or not, when you're a writer and you're writing those things, people actually do read them. People used to come up to me, and when I would introduce myself, they would say, "Oh, you're the one who writes for so-and-so," and I would be shocked, because honestly sometimes it felt like no one was reading that stuff. But turns out they actually were, and they did trust what I said. So be completely and totally upfront and honest with your reader about your opinions, and keep in mind that what you're writing here is 100% your opinion. However, it has to be backed up with specific evidence and specific details and specific illustrations.